hot.
All right, good deal. Here we go.
I don't hear.
I don't hear either.
I don't hear.
Oh, you know what? I moved. Now you.
Hello. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Ready? You hear me?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
You hear yourself?
I'm in.
All right,
Good.
let's go. And we welcome now to the Brandy Show an old friend, Eli Zaret, who is dipping his toe in the waters of podcast. Eli is coming up with a podcast of his own called Eli Zaret No Filter. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, Jimmy. And, we do have history, but the difference is I've kind of done stuff similar to this before, did talk radio many times. I'm a little less new to it than you are. Very different role for you to go from being a play-by-play guy or an analyst to doing half an hour it's just you or an hour it's just you and be extemporaneous. This is a little different art, and you can see it's not as easy as some of the other things you've done that you're used to.
Sitting in front of a microphone all by your lonesome is very lonesome.
It is.
But here's the deal. The name of your show, I think, is perfect. No Filter. That's what you built your reputation on early in your career, and that's what you're kind of going back to. It's full circle for you, isn't it?
Well, growing up in New York, and I was fascinated by the whole business, the whole media, and Howard Cosell, I was just enraptured by him. I couldn't believe that you could do what he did, to be so eloquent, to take a topic and say whatever you wanted about it and have a strong opinion about somebody who might get mad at you. And I said, I was in such admiration that the way he spoke, the way he wrote so eloquently, I thought that's how you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to say what you think. And when you and I go back to remember Al Ackerman, who we both worked for?
Right.
It was either news and then you would write commentary, editorial. Now it's all mixed together. So I started doing it that way and then had to realize, no, there's news and there's opinion. And so, but yes, I did become an opinionated FM sportscaster because I thought that's how you're supposed to do it.
The question I have is that how long did it take for that to get accepted at a local level? Howard did it on Monday Night Football. Nationally, he was a figure bigger than life. For you entering a Detroit market or wherever, did you have to be, I think you started at RIF?
Actually, no, that was my third.
That was your third stop.
I started WABX. See, I see what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I just started doing it commentaries because that's what Howard did. And as it turns out, I started in FM radio when it was underground. People forget that in 1974 when I started, there was no FM radios in cars. So it was this cultish thing where you had to either go to Mickey Shores and get the converter and screw it under your dashboard, and then your AM radio became your FM. And then suddenly, so I was doing it this way because I was being a little Howard Cosell. Then overnight, the big three makes it standard equipment in cars, and suddenly FM is now in the forefront. So there was nobody else doing it.
And your entrance into this business in the FM market, really, that's what ultimately got you the footing you need in the foundation to become the Eli Zaret that you're there today because of your love of Howard early, and then it became mainstream probably, 10, 15 years into your career?
Probably so, but, Ackerman was kind of the local version of Howard.
He was.
He would do that commentary in the Pontiac Silverdome every week. and he came from that era, and so I had great respect for him that way, and I was excited to be able to go there and do it.
Can I give you an Ackerman story? He
Please.
did an interview with Jim Campbell of the Detroit Tigers through a chain link fence. And I was down producing that for him in Lakeland and told him, Al, let's go around and get him, in a normal interview setting, over the shoulder, all that stuff. Al said, no, I want to do it with a chain link fence between us. So there was a method to his madness.
There really, really was. And I was thrilled to be able to work there. And yeah, it took, it was different. But that's one of the reason that our news director, Jim Snyder, hired me. He wanted something different. He didn't want TV news to be typical like it always was, and he wanted to put a little edginess into it. And I was very lucky to be there at that time. And Frank, I was happy with doing FM radio. And the reason I got into TV was I got a call one day from Dennis Franklin. Now, Dennis
the old
Franklin,
Michigan quarterback,
number 9,
yeah,
who only got to throw 9 passes a game and resents it to this day. But Denny was a sales guy at Channel 4, and he said, hey, Gail Gardner is going, or Gail Granick at the time, is going to ESPN. They're looking for somebody, come down. And so I went for an audition, and Jim Snyder put me in a little room with a camera and said, do a commentary, did a commentary. So I was very lucky that he was looking for that type of person and brought me to Channel 4.
And the other thing we were talking about in the hallway before the show, the one thing I think the part of your career that I think put you on the launch pad to go was the Tiger baseball right before the 84 season, 2 years before 84.
82.
Well, yeah,
you were a part of that. That's
yeah.
I think
but
about
that really, that put you into, I would say, really big-time mainstream, because the Tigers at that time with Sparky, they were making that move.
A lot happened. You forget, and I tell people that Mort Krim, because when did you get Channel 4? 78 you got there?
78, 79.
Channel 4 was struggling. They hired Mort Krim to try and take him out of the doldrums to compete with Bill Bonds, who was killing everybody. And Mort was not doing well. He was not cutting in. But in 1982, strange things came together. I think 3 things. Number one, NBC came up with a show called Miami Vice, and finally, NBC had a program lineup, so now people were sampling Channel 4 News. There was a guy we had, and I think this had something to do with it. He was the graphic artist named Jim Huff. He created this pastel-looking a tableau of different colors that hadn't been on color TV. And the third thing was that the Tigers started to get good. And Channel 4 back in the day, which could never happen in these days, actually televised the games, and just 40 of them. People forget the 84 Tigers on TV 50 times.
George Cal and Al Kaline bring you the ball game.
So that was, I think a lot came together. But the 82 Tigers, so you were part of this story, and so I'm new there, okay? I go there. I get there November 1980, the week that Sugar Ray Leonard fought Roberto Duran. Remember, that was the week. And so I get there at November 80, and by the next year, November 81, I was a weekend guy. You're the street reporter. Don Shane was great. Don Shane taught me, you both taught me television. You and Don taught me the nuts. You told me what a soundbite was. You know what it was? Here's what a soundbite is. So I was learning. So a year I'm learning, and I guess I'm doing the weekend news, and I'm getting better. And so satellites had come in a year or two before. That's why Gail left, because ESPN now, they were expanding.
The worldwide network.
That's right. And so now suddenly you have enough highlights. So Alan Frank, our general manager, said, I think we can do a half-hour pregame show before the Tiger games to really sell. And it had just been Sparky and Al before that, where Al would do an interview with Sparky Anderson. And so Don Shane was a logical choice to do that show. He should have done that show. He was 2 years younger than me, but so good, so along the road, he was eons ahead of me. So the problem was he was just married, he's got a kid, he's very busy. He just brought Final Edition, which at the time was a brand new thing, because there were actually enough highlights, thanks to satellites, that you could actually have a half-hour show of highlights, sports highlights. People forget. That was amazing back then. And so Don didn't want to do the show because he was too busy. He had a new child. He was 28 years old. He's doing the 5:30 news. He's doing the Final Edition. He's a busy man with a family. And so he was young. He was only 28 or 29 at the time. He was 30 at the time. And so he thought that he could manipulate the business. In other words, he decided that Channel 4 shouldn't do the show, the half-hour pregame show, because he didn't want to do it. And so you both came to me, because you were doing Don's, Don was above us both, and said, listen, we can't do this show. So if they ask you, Jimmy, to do it or me to do it, let's agree not to do it. I'm thinking the chances of me getting asked to do this are 0. So Don's taught me television. Sure, I'll agree. So time goes on, and apparently he's reluctant to do the show. It's too busy. He tries to get the station not to do it. That's the naivety that he was, and I'm sure he learned better years later, but he actually thought that he could shape station policy, and he couldn't. So he doesn't want to do the show, and I get a call from Alan Frank in early 82, maybe it was December, January 82, December 81, and he calls me downstairs and he said, we're going to do a half-hour pregame show, and I know it because Don's told me. And he said, and you're pretty quick on your feet. He said, I'd like you to do it. And I said, okay. And Don was very upset, and you told me it was the wrong thing to do, and maybe it was, but what am I going to do? Tell the general manager I'm not going to do a show he asked me to do? So it was a career break for me and tough for him. He then went 6 years to other markets doing weekends.
Yeah.
So
well, my deal was on that. if they hire you and you do that, I know you're taken out of the mix from a regular work standpoint in the weekends. And basically, I start working 7 days a week.
Oh.
Because you know what they did? You remember what they did?
No.
To help us from a personnel standpoint, they hired Gary Danielson.
Oh, yeah.
And Gary came in and started doing weekends. Guess who produced his weekend shows?
You did?
Me.
Oh.
So that's why I knew that when you took the job, I knew my schedule goes from 5 days a week to probably 7 days a week, working weekends from 3 to midnight because there's 6 and 11 news. And we're doing Tiger highlights. But you're also doing Tiger baseball pregame. You're out of the mix from a personnel standpoint. Don's not going to do it. Al's not going to do it. Who's left?
Right.
Me. And they wanted to make Gary a TV guy, and he was a former quarterback of the Lions.
He was still a quarterback.
Still a quarterback for the Lions,
Yeah.
and that was a big splash for them. And at that point, that's when I decided, you know what? I've got more to give. I've got more to do. I've got talent here, and what do I like the best? And what I liked the best was play-by-play. I like being at the event. I didn't like being on a newscast because on a newscast, you do two things. You talk about what has happened or talk about what's going to happen. Right. I wanted to talk about what was happening when it was happening.
Exactly right. You're actually exactly.
That to me challenges me because I had to be prepared so that when it happened, I could help the listener, the viewer, whoever, along with that particular play. To me, that was the essence.
You're part of the game. You're right.
Exactly. And being prepared for the game, the adrenaline flows. You're there for 3.5 hours and you're on go. And that I found fun and more exciting than the 6 and the 11 news and getting highlights and cutting all that stuff up for,
you're right.
The videotape that you cut up.
The farther you go in the career in TV, the farther away from the action you get.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're an anchor man, you're stuck there at 11 o'clock. You can't be at the game, although we'd go early with Sonny Elliott to do an hour or two at the ballpark.
At the Olympia.
So it wasn't until I worked for the Pistons many decades later that I actually said, yeah, it's so different to be part of the game instead of being before and after and doing all this. And what's worse than predicting what's going to happen in a game and doing previews? Hated all that.
I hated all that. And that's why I started working on TV and doing the old on TV Michigan replays at midnight. I did high school football game of the week on Channel 56. And I told them at Channel 4, look, I'm going to do this stuff. I'll take vacation days when I'm busy and when I'm doing these things just so that you know when I'm there. And I can schedule it out 3 months in advance. And they said, okay, that sounds okay. And once I started doing that, 2 weeks later, Bob Warfield, the news director, came to me and says, what day would you like to be your last day?
That's right.
And I said, okay then. And off I went to do freelance stuff. And, you look at it at the time, you go, oh, my God. And then I look at it now and said, what a blessing for me.
You found your niche, man.
It was what I wanted to do. The old story about find a job you love, you don't work a day in your life, I'm guilty. And that's what's cool. Real quickly, let's talk about what's No Filter, Eli Zaret, No Filter, the podcast going to be like.
Well, I had Jimmy King on today, and I'm going to have guests and basically just say what I think. This is a free form. And stuff happens, whether it's Urban Meyer, whether it's DJ Durkin, whether it's issues in I love this issue that I talk about with Jimmy King in the first one, this article in Sports Illustrated about depression in the NBA and guys like Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan admitting that they're athletes, they're under pressure, they're normal human beings. They're not just these icons that can deal with all the pressure. They're real human beings, and the games are built almost to depress you because of the lifestyle, because of the losing and all that. And so it's fascinating to see social issues, which is the lack of stigma now in mental illness, how it fits into sports. So I love topics like that.
All right, here's what I'm going to do now. We're going to throw some topics. I want quick answers to this. We'll go back and forth. We'll call this ping pong, Brandy and Eli. What do you think?
Listen, I'm getting old. Hopefully my brain's
well, real
still
quickly, just a few topics
just
to kind of give everybody a sense of where Eli's coming from. The Detroit Lions' troubles. Is it the Fords?
Yes. Only because...
No, it isn't.
Well, no, it's not the Fords because they don't do any coaching moves. My theory is you need a genius in the organization. They never had a genius. There's got to be a genius. Got to be a coach. Got to be a general manager or the owner. No geniuses. They're still looking for.
Here's my theory, and it goes back to what you said. It's not the Fords. They've given them every possible facility that they need to be successful. To me, it's their scouting. They've never put the talent in place to where they need to be to get to a Super Bowl. And along with that coaching.
Where's
marriage,
the genius
that's
that
right.
plays the scouting?
The marriage between
Before
the players and the coaches.
Real quick, a teammate of yours, did you play with Dwight Hicks?
Yes. No, Dwight was later than I was.
Anyway, Dwight Hicks was out of football But Bill, he was managing a health food restaurant, and Bill Walsh gave him a tryout. And so he knew somehow that this defensive back that had been rejected by 2 or 3 teams would fit into his system. That's a genius. Found a player, fit him in. Belichick, a genius. So you need one in the organization. They haven't had one yet.
Okay, next topic. Old media versus new media. What we're doing now is podcast, new media.
New media.
AM, FM radio, conventional TV.
Dead. The Titanic heading to the iceberg. It happens every year. Look at the stats. 5% loss every year of revenue.
See, I kind of agree because I think I see kids watching their phones, and I think that's the future. That's where this thing is going, and that's what podcasts and the streaming stuff is all about.
We're a tribal nation now. Pro-Trump, anti-Trump. Pro this, anti-that. And so we find our own communities and our own people and our own echo chamber, and that's what media is coming to.
Roger Goodell.
A great bureaucrat. He makes $45 million a year. He must earn it. So I have never respected any from Tagliabue to Pete Rozelle to him. I think they're all geniuses in their own way, but I always side with the players, and I always wind up.
I think he's handled the league poorly in a lot of ways because it's so they don't take a stand. It's the tail wagging the dog, and to me, Roger Goodell's the dog of the NFL. Don't get me wrong; he has taken that NFL into a gigantic, multi-billion-dollar industry. For the owners, he's been great. But from a operational perception standpoint, to me, it's the tail wagging the dog. And if I'm the dog, I don't want to get that too deep.
The bottom line is commissioners work for the owners, and therefore they can never find that balance in between the owners and the players.
Play-by-play or color?
Color.
You like color better than play-by-play?
I like color because play-by-play guys are restricted. And I looked and I just think that Mario Mpemba, a guy can get hit on the head by a fly ball and he'll say, I misjudged it a little bit, instead of saying, my God, what a bonehead play. So at least the commentator can give an opinion and say something about a player and his performance that the play-by-play guy ignores.
Baseball, basketball, hockey, or football?
Always been a baseball guy.
Have you?
And when you and I were growing up, that's all there was. NFL didn't get big until the late 60s. So it was baseball. I read about baseball, the numbers, the stats, the heroes, baseball.
Will soccer take over? Will make an impact in the United States as a major professional sport?
No. When Pele came to the Cosmos in the 70s, Howard Cosell said, someday soccer bowl will be bigger than the Super Bowl. Didn't happen then, ain't happening any soon, because they don't use their hands. We're a hand-eye coordination type of thing. Throwing a ball, hitting a ball, catching a ball.
Eli Zarrett, No Filter. That's his podcast. It's coming up. Look for it on Detroit Podcast or Podcast Detroit. I don't know, whatever it is. Eli, thanks for being with us.
Jimmy.
I will listen, man.
As I listen to you.